Hello. We are going to get started on our final presentation of the day from Re3DTech. We have Peter Koostra, Director of Engineering, on the topic of what it takes to qualify an aftermarket automotive part. Peter is the Director of Engineering for Additive Manufacturing at Re3DTech, a service bureau located in Chicago. He began his additive manufacturing career at GSC, Renishaw, and Mark Forged before joining Re3DTech. Today, he consults with companies to optimize part design and engineering workflows for additive manufacturing and focuses on research and testing programs for expanding possible applications with plastic, composite, and metal 3D printing. Thank you, Peter, for joining. And if you don't mind sharing your screen as well, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, we should be good. Audio's good?
Everything's great. I'm popping up.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we'll get into it. Before I start, I want to give a big thank you to everyone joining in today. This is really exciting and some stuff I have to show. I think will really drive this whole event home. I'd also like to give a big thank you to Link3D for hosting this event. The time we're at with the additive manufacturing industry is really influential, and having events like this for knowledge sharing and information sharing is really going to be instrumental in pushing this forward. So that being said, really excited to share what I have. Today we're going to be talking about what it takes to qualify an aftermarket automotive part. It's going to be a little bit high level, not too specific about some stuff, but if there are any follow-up questions, more than happy to dive into that with you guys after the fact. So a little introduction about Re3DTech. We are a 3D printing service bureau located out of Grayslake, Illinois. Our main focuses are on the Mark Forged and HP printing technologies. And right now we have a 10,000 square foot dedicated facility for our plastics production, and then a 5,000 square foot dedicated facility for composite and metal production. We have that dedicated facility for plastic production because our main focus as a company is really to enable the production end of 3D printing and really drive it from 3D printing to additive manufacturing as we talk about. So we really take a heavy focus, starting from day one on the design all the way through to either qualifying the part or heading into a production scenario. A little bit about myself. I am the Director of Engineering there. I started out in additive about 5+ years ago. I've been fortunate enough to work for a couple of 3D printing OEM manufacturers as an application engineer out in the field, and working hands-on with a lot of these printers as well. My main background and really where I got my technical kind of hands-on experience was with DMLS systems, working at Renishaw, and really taught me the importance of understanding the printers that you're working with and really understanding everything that has to go into those specific printers. I'm going to hopefully draw a lot of correlations between DMLS and the MJF printing technologies today to hopefully kind of resonate with the customer base that's watching. So I mentioned the technologies that we have in-house are Mark Forged and HP. The main technology that we're going to talk about today is HP, simply because the qualification process that we went through was on the HP platform, as well as it's really kind of set up and built to be a production system, meaning that it's going to really be more in line with the quality expectations that are needed for some of these certifications out in the market. So I'm mostly going to focus on just polymers today off the HP system. So to kind of elaborate and give you guys some context about the application that we're talking about, we're going to be in the market of automotive collision repair, and maybe not the most widely kind of accepted industry that people want to get into right away. However, it is a really, really large industry, and I think this specific application is a perfect example of just how disruptive additive manufacturing can be, and how we can take a different approach to designing our parts, as well as enabling production in a different way than we're typically used to. So we're looking at roughly about a $284 billion market, and it's really only expected to grow. Of that market, 30% of those replacement parts are certified parts. And we'll kind of dive into what certified means here in just a minute, but that really leaves a pretty large market where 3D printing or additive manufacturing can be a really good fit to start changing how we produce parts and get parts in people's hands. So, when you get into an accident, you really have four options on how you can approach replacing the broken components in your part or in your car. You can look at just using a used part, kind of fixing it yourself and doing the DIY method, which certainly some people do. However, majority of people go down the path of utilizing their insurance companies. And really you're kind of left with three options from there. You can get a direct OEM replacement and take it to a dealership, or you can look at taking it to a mechanic shop, which a majority of people do, right? And at that point, you can look at buying certified parts or uncertified parts. And not to dive into this aspect too much, but there are certainly pros and cons to both. And we're going to kind of talk about why you would want a certified part and really what has to go into qualifying an aftermarket automotive part as quote unquote certified. So to talk about the specific part that we're looking at and really how additive manufacturing is kind of changing the approach to this and why it's, in my opinion, a truly disruptive technology. So if you, for example, backed up into a mailbox and you damaged a headlight or a tail light, in most scenarios, that entire unit is not actually damaged enough that it needs to be completely replaced. However, from a supply chain perspective and how a lot of these OEM manufacturers handle this, they end up replacing the whole tail light or headlight. But let's say, for instance, all that was damaged were the tabs on that headlight or tail light. There could be a scenario where all you need to do is actually replace that tab. And in the long run, that is going to save the insurance companies a lot of money, and then in the end, hopefully save us as consumers some insurance premiums. So what this company that we worked with, CRS out of Michigan, did, they looked at, instead of replacing the entire housing on the headlight and tail light, actually just trimming the existing components off of that and then creating a 3D printed component to fit onto the existing housing. Obviously saving a significant amount of time and money and effort involved in the whole process, and really just an inventive way to kind of handle this. So one of the things that we took advantage of with the specific part that we're looking at here is designing some of the geometries to really only fit with 3D printing, meaning that they can't be produced any other way. And as a result, we had a far better performing product and something that really kind of satisfies everyone along the chain, including the certification process. So to kind of dig a bit deeper into the specific certification that we pursued, and that process and really our story of how that looked like, we worked with CAPA. And if you're not familiar with who CAPA is the Certified Auto Parts Association. And if you've ever been in an accident or had to take your car in for work and you've seen them replacing out some parts, you very likely saw a sticker very similar to the one located below. And there is often a number put on there. That number, you can go directly onto their website and actually look at the full traceability of that part, exactly where it came from, and really every piece of information along the way that any consumer would really want to know. So a little bit about CAPA. They're really kind of the main certification organization, started in 1987 to really kind of identify high quality parts for replacement. And really the best way to describe it is an organization that finds parts that either meet or exceed the existing OEM's kind of requirements for that part. So just to give a quick breakdown of kind of the summary of what CAPA is and the certification process associated with that, because it is, a bit different based on industry and type of certification you're getting. So I want to give a little bit of a background on kind of what has to go into CAPA certification so that we're kind of all on the same page here. So it is an ongoing compliance, meaning it isn't done once you get the certification. CAPA performs random, field tests. They actually go out and purchase parts directly from a vendor, test those parts, as well as require a certain number of parts per year from us. Full traceability is required, meaning we have to do everything from materials to really everything involved, and having a track record of that along the way. Annual on-site audits are performed, so we do have to meet with CAPA once a year, if not more, to kind of show and prove that we are living up to what we say we are. And then really to kind of give you an idea of what is being tested, the three main areas of that kind of continual compliance are fit, functionality, and overall quality. So the initial kind of certification process to get that stamp of approval starts out with visual testing, and there's a long list of kind of sub tests that go into each one of these. But for visual testing, they get a baseline color of the part. They get overall surface finish, surface roughness, things like that, that they use as a baseline moving forward on our parts. From there, they perform material testing, things like chemical reaction tests, a whole suite of lab tests that they actually perform directly on the part. From there, they put it in, pretty comparative performance testing to what a traditional headlight would be exposed to for production. Things like fatigue testing, vibration testing. It is really actually tested above and beyond what the standard headlights are put through. From there, it goes into what they call the VTF, which is actually the most significant test that they do along the kind of certification process. That is a vehicle fit test where they actually put it on a true production car out in the field. So they don't go directly to the OEM and just say, hey, is this good or bad? They actually go out in the field, put it on cars, see how it actually fits, and pending that approval, that's really kind of one of the last steps along the way. And then from there, it's initial production audit where they actually come to the facility and oversee the initial production run. So to kind of dive into what we ran into with CAPA early on, because we first sat down with them and realized that very quickly they didn't have enough of a background with the additive manufacturing process to understand whether or not this was going to be a part that they can qualify or not. So being the first ones in the world to approach this certification, we had to work hand in hand with them and really understand what we were going to have to do a bit different compared to traditional manufacturing. And this is an oversimplification of kind of some of the things that we needed to answer. However, these three questions kind of really sum up what we had to answer for CAPA to really get that stamp of approval. First being, can AM meet the performance needs? Second being, can AM meet the quality needs? And then third being, can AM meet the production demand? And the next few slides here will kind of address those questions. So first one, can we meet the performance needs? The fact that we did get this part approved for production and have had every part since then approved for production for a variety of different vehicles, I think is a true testament to the materials as well as the printers that HP has produced. So we passed every test with flying colors that they put it through. Again, there's kind of a multitude of very specific tests that go into all of these ones listed up here. However, like I said, we passed with flying colors, whether it was thermal, environmental, chemical. They lived up to, the data that HP had put out there about the actual performance of these materials. And it was really exciting for us to see because it kind of, opened up the door for other applications as well in the automotive space. So can we meet the quality needs? This is I would say, a very large question within the additive manufacturing industry, and reality is it's different depending on every type of printing technology that you look at. However, with the HP MJF platform, we've had very impressive results with it. So right now, I would say this is the one question that we're still learning as we go along. However, the results that we've had kind of speak for themselves. So what you're looking at here is kind of a rolling report from really one of our largest customers on a quality inspection that they do on a true end-use production part, something that is being in the hands of consumers every single day. So to see quality reports in this nature and performing this well, I think really addresses and answers the question: can we meet the quality needs? And we've seen this kind of amongst a majority of our customers, and really look to kind of continue to grow upon this and have better results. Some of the other things that can kind of address this question, we started when we first got involved with Kappa, putting a lot more effort and time into how we track our printers. So the plot that you're looking at above right now is our three main production HP printers tracked on their tolerancing. So we've developed kind of a proprietary way of tracking the overall tolerances of our printers. And the biggest thing to take away from there, aside from the really tight tolerances that we can achieve with it, the biggest thing to take away is that they respond to changes that we make on the machine, and they consistently respond. So you'll notice, obviously, the kind of walking averages as a result of all those printers getting closer and closer to where we want them to be. Those were a direct results of some of the changes that we made on the printers, as well as continual and better maintenance that we did on the printers. And also tied into that is the actual kind of prepping the machines prior to being going into production, so that they have the quality that we're expecting. Some of the other things that we've implemented, and one of the things that Kappa was really happy to work with us on, is looking at in-process inspection as we kind of go along the production process, through actual powder removal, and then dyeing, and then prepping parts during surfacing. We have the ability to check all of those parts using actual 3D printed check fixtures along the way. I mentioned that the vehicle test fit is one of the most important pieces of that certification process, and we kind of implemented that directly into our workflow. We have to, by Kappa's expectations, visually inspect every part. Every single one, 100% of the parts need to be visually inspected. So we kind of coupled that into doing a direct kind of check fixture check along the way, and the result has been very impressive on the quality reports that we've received back from Kappa. Now, the last question, and the one that I would say really has yet to be answered. However, hopefully going to show some data here that gives you an idea of whether or not we can meet the production demand. The two plots that you're looking at are on the left-hand side is number of jobs actually sent to printers. So I have it broken down to compare our Markforged print jobs to our HP print jobs. And what you'll notice is that we actually do a significant amount more on average with the Markforged printers, and we can kind of group or couple that into really just being traditional FDM or FF style printing. So the unique thing, though, is that if you look at the plot on the right-hand side, that is the overall number of parts produced. So the biggest thing to get from this is that there's a huge division between overall number of parts produced to the actual number of jobs that we do on a specific system. And I think this is really just a true testament to what is so unique about the MJF platform, is and the fact that we're able to scale up at the rate that we are. So with just our 3 production units that we have, In 2019, we were able to produce over 70,000 parts. And it's worth mentioning that we brought those systems on during the year. So starting out 2019, we only had one printer really dedicated towards production. And as a result, we've really scaled up, even with just a few extra printers. And in 2020, we look to more than double that, produced volume. And so, again, we can't really answer that question just yet because we're kind of still in some of the early phases of all this. But with the numbers that we looked at with Kappa, they felt more than satisfied that we were going to be able to meet the production demand, put on this kind of specific application. So to kind of sum up, really what we saw as the keys to AM production quality and being able to produce a part that is going to fit to a majority of the certification processes. First being is the traceability. So having documentation, along the entire process. And really what that's going to require is a decent amount of effort from the supplier to work with all the different companies that are involved in the AM side of things right now. That being software, some of the material suppliers, as well as the hardware. There isn't a mainstream way of kind of getting some of that documentation, and it does require a bit of effort and something that we have put a lot of time into kind of developing a way to make that happen. And tying into that is going to be automation. So for us to really be able to compete with companies all throughout the world that are maybe have different labor rates than us, we have to implement automation. One, to get our price point to actually be in an area where someone is going to want to utilize additive manufacturing over injection molding, as well as it reduces some of the quality, possible sources of error. And having a more repeatable process is certainly going to be a key to additive manufacturing and enabling production. And then the third is speed. So there's a lot that can go into kind of that general point there. However, we have to make sure that our production cycles are happening on a regular basis. We're able to flip machines around very quick. And a big thing that ties into the speed is actually having machines perform in the to be expected range, I would say, meaning we have to perform maintenance on these things very regularly, not necessarily because we have to, but because we need to be preemptive about finding some of the sources of error. So we clean down our machines constantly. I can't really stress enough just how much cleaning a machine can actually, in the long run, make sure that you meet your production demands, because you will be preemptive about finding things that maybe need to be swapped out, whether that be bulbs or recoders, things like that. And for us to be able to have that turnaround time, we really need to be preemptive about that. So every little minute detail can really impact what our overall turnaround time is and speed to production. So to give you guys kind of a breakdown of workflow associated with what we do, I mentioned in the slide prior to this that having communication or a variety of different companies be part of the overall workflow is a bit difficult because we need to have software communicate with hardware to be able to then get documentation and record things properly. So there's a couple of pieces of hardware though that really stand out in our overall process that I just kind of want to mention and highlight here. Before I get to that though, I want to mention the software aspect of it. This is something that I think is quite often overlooked for kind of how instrumental it is in producing a good part. So being able to export good meshes, actually being able to then work on those mesh files, set them up properly. And then I think, even more importantly within like the NetFab pieces of software are being able to orient and pack parts properly. And we have really put a lot of time and effort into understanding how to best utilize our software so that it leads to good printed parts in the long run. From the hardware perspective, I can't really give enough kudos to HP and their team for developing the HP 4210s and 5210 systems, which is what we utilize, because they've really put a heavy focus on production. And as a result, we can produce parts in a quick manner. And their new system, the HP 5200 series, really incorporates a lot of things that I think are going to pave the way moving forward. That being, machine learning. So they built in a lot of kind of in-process inspection checks and ways of kind of being preemptive about quality issues or things that might arise during the printing process. So they are thinking, in the future and really have set themselves up for success in the production realm. The other piece of this that I do want to mention is the post-processing, and we utilize Dimension really heavily in our actual cleaning and surface finishing. They really have kind of been the way for us to enable really scaled production. As we added 2, then 3 printers, we really quickly realized that we can't manually be cleaning and processing every part, let alone there is a difference in operators and how well they clean the parts. And as a result of that, you can get differences in quality. So having a automated process is really, really key if we want to be able to consistently provide good parts. And we're really excited to work with Dimension, and I think they're a fantastic company based on their vision looking forward. They've put a heavy focus on producing their systems to comply with other certification processes, and this is really going to be instrumental in just pushing the whole industry forward. So to kind of talk about some of the future of AM certifications, I want to really just talk about the fact that as we all know, tuning in, the AM industry is very diverse, and the media has done us a bit of a disservice in the sense of kind of grouping 3D printing to really mean one thing. However, whether or not we're even talking about just metals or plastics, even within that, there's so many different technologies as a result of that. And for us to kind of head towards the realm of certifications and qualifying these for things like aerospace and automotive, medical, we're really going to have an in-depth knowledge of each one of these printing processes. And this is really where service bureaus can be very helpful, because they really intimately know specific technology and kind of how to scale that up for production. So looking forward, if we want to get into those highly regulated spaces, we're going to have a very in-depth knowledge of each one of these types of printers on the market. And that directly ties into another component of this, which is really designing for the additive manufacturing process, and understanding that DMLS DFAM is nothing like SLS or MJF, or even just traditional kind of FDM 3D printing. So overall, it's really going to boil down to being just the same as traditional design for manufacturing, and taking a hyper focus on how we can optimize our parts for production, if that is the route that we do want to go. So that was really all I had for the presentation there.
Thank you, Peter. That was awesome.
I think we'll open it up to questions now.
Yes. So we have a few questions in the Q&A. First question: are your facilities IATF 16949 certified, in addition to CAPA? And with the automotive industry pioneering the APQP approach, how is this approach transferred for AM products?
We are not IATF 16949 certified.
Yes.
And full disclosure, I am not a quality engineer, and I've had to learn quite a bit, over the past year to go down this path. So I can't really talk too much about the APQP approach, specifically within the automotive space, but how does this transfer? I really wouldn't be able to directly answer that question.
No worries. We'll move on to the next question. Do you see a transition from part qualification and certification to process qualification and certification in the automotive space?
That's a very good question. And I certainly think that that will be the case. I think the HP platform is kind of a good example of that in the sense that we're not producing, kind of one part at a time. We're producing batches of parts, and that's one thing that we certainly kind of wanted to address, during this whole CAPA certification process, was that, we have a way of essentially qualifying a whole group of parts and doing that all at once. And I think that's why it's going to take more of a focus on the process and really understanding every kind of step along the way for that. Because at least from our data and what we've seen as we've really gone down this road, part quality really doesn't differ too much within an individual batch, at least for like the certification process, not so much that it's really even worth noting. So, we're trying to head down the path of qualifying a few parts out of an individual batch and using that kind of moving forward. So yes, I do think that is the case. Yeah, I think your mic is off there.
Sorry about that. One question left. Is any PPAP process qualification required by CAPA?
No, it is not.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Peter, for joining and participating today. Really enjoyed it. And we are now going into our last virtual networking session. So I will see you all on the other side. And I believe Shane has a message for everyone before we begin that as well. Thank you.